Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters. I'm Jamil Zainasheff.
I'm Travis Gomble.
And I'm Mike Persine, and you're listening to Brew Strong.
I like how you try and you almost sound like the movie guy or something, you know?
Yeah.
The movie
get a
film
little
guy.
more flavor.
Finger guns.
And the finger
We're all
guns.
about flavor here, right? This is the whole point of brewing.
This is what, audio only listeners, you're missing out on Mike and his finger guns and, the whole enjoyable
experience.
The whole experience. I was going to say the whole circus, but yes, the whole enjoyable circus of watching us live on Facebook. And if you're watching live on Facebook, you can ask questions. You just type in the little comment window there, and we see those, and we'll answer those, as well as stuff that people have sent in via email. So if you email us at brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com, we will get those questions, and we're on top of it now. If new questions come in, we get those usually next show or the show after. And then, we also mix in some questions from decades past when people sent in questions 16 years ago. We're knocking those out still. Actually, I think I got all the 16 and 15-year-old ones done. I think the oldest ones now are maybe like 14 years old, something like that.
13, yeah. Yeah, so I do want to make notice, Facebook says, community standards, but we don't have standards, so don't worry about that. Just ask your question.
Yeah, we're
Standards? What's that?
We have standards, but
we set the bar low.
They're mighty low. Well, you know who has very high standards?
Our friends over at
Mr.
Blickman
Blick.
Engineering.
Yep.
Our friends over at Blickman Engineering, our good friend Drew Barnes. He is innovating equipment to innovate your brew day, make your brew day easier. Innovating your brew day with fantastic engineering from the brilliant engineering minds of the folks at Blickman Engineering. And they've been paying for the show since you don't have to. Whether you're looking for, the more basic gear, still high quality stuff, real solid, like an anvil. You can look at the Anvil Engineering goods. Those are the Blickman line without too many bells and whistles. Can help keep the cost down, but the quality is still very high. Or you can go with the Blickman Engineering line of fancy goodies that are really, like I say, innovating your brew day, changing the way people homebrew, and now changing the way people professionally brew, as Blickman Engineering makes commercial pro level brew gear. So if you're looking at starting your own craft brewery, check out Blickman Engineering. Email Drew and say, hey, Jamil says I should check out your commercial gear. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. They don't want to sell you anything you don't want to buy, but you owe it to yourself and to them to just give them a look. I think you'll be quite pleased. All right, let's see here. So Q&A.
Q&A. So we do have a more recent question. This one's from this year. Tim writes, hey, Jamil. Doesn't want our opinions, obviously. Don't blame him.
I'm out. Just kidding.
I have been adjusting my brewing water to a pH of 6 with acid for my light beers and it has been working out great as far as getting my mash, pH, and range. I was just wondering, for dark beers like a stout, would it be okay to not add acid and the dark malts would get me to the proper mash pH?
Well,
Short answer, yes.
yeah, it depends on, the buffering capacity of the water, but and how much, roast and how dark a roast is going in, because that's really going to determine it. But most likely, for a lot of waters, and you're doing a imperial stout or a dry stout, generally, yeah, it'll get you there. So the key thing is either get yourself a pH meter or some pH strips and give that a try. Good way to know
Yeah,
for sure.
I was going to add in, I mean, like you said, buffering capacity of the water, we call it residual alkalinity, and at least I do. The big one too is the type of dark malts you're using. Like if you're using roasted barley or something really dark, it's going to add a lot more acidity than a pale chocolate or something really light, like a barely dark malt. So there's a lot of variables, and that's where, as Jamil said, the best thing to do is have a pH meter, take your mash sample, cool it down to the proper temperature of room temperature, and take your pH. And what I do is I adjust it for the next beer. So if I had a high pH on that beer, if I brew it again, I know to maybe use a little more acid or something. So
Yeah, so what I'd add to that without trying to overcomplicate it is make sure you understand the water you're adjusting. Understand your starting point, because that's a big missing part of the question is we don't know what Tim is starting with. If Tim's starting with RO, which he's probably not if he'd have mentioned it, if he's starting with tap water, which he very possibly could be using filtered tap water versus spring water, they change. Try to understand your water, or you can look at the results and learn from the results. But if your input's changing and you don't know, then your output's going to change and you won't know why. So, pH meter, test strips, understand what you're starting with, and see where you finish. Make some tweaks.
And you can, and I don't know how into it he's already looked into his water, but you can usually go to your local water company and they can produce these water profiles. Actually, a lot of them will do it specifically for beer and the certain ones you want, which your chlorides, sulfates, alkalinity, hardness stuff. So you can ask for that.
And a lot of the municipalities they'll have this information online, or they're required to send it out, annually, things like that.
Yeah. And mine always gave me the really useful information, such as how much arsenic's in my water. It's always been low. I appreciate that.
There you go. All right, let's do this. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this.
Back to the two guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're doing a live Q&A. For example, Patrick's in the chat, and he was asking, any advice on using ascorbic acid in the brewing process? I've seen recommendations to use a few grams in the mash to prevent oxidation downstream in the packaging process. Cellar Science has an Ox Blocks product out. Worth it? Any recommended dosage times or best practices? Do commercial breweries use ascorbic acid? In general, commercial breweries do not use ascorbic acid. I think there might be some who do. It's any one of these things that, Charlie Papazian used to throw, or maybe still does, a teaspoon or something like that, or a half teaspoon of cinnamon in his mash, for a similar reason, to prevent, as a antioxidant.
Antioxidant. Yeah.
And my thinking on it is, it's not really necessary. I think, people ask about, oxidation in, splashing the wort, after the boil, and, or during the boil or during the mash. Um, place like Budweiser, other breweries around the world, they will cascade the wort across a chiller, which is essentially just pipes with cold water running in them, and it cascades down the front of those pipes, and they'll pour their wort down it. They're not worried about oxidation.
Oxygen.
In fact, they want to get oxygen in there for
Healthy
fermentation,
yeah.
but while it's hot. So I just think too much is done over that. I think one of the more important things is the thermal load, and the total thermal load that is in the beer, from the kilning of the malts to and how the malt was produced, and how much you're boiling it and how aggressively you're boiling it. You don't want to boil too aggressively. You don't want to apply too much heat. You want it to boil, but not over boil or overextend it, because that can actually shorten your shelf life. And really, I mean, what we're talking about is packaging, shelf lives, ascorbic acid, all these things. And I'm sure there are other products out there as well, are meant to, provide more shelf stability. As a home brewer, if you, package, more important is packaging carefully, to reduce oxygen pickup at package time, and then storing cold. And if you store cold and you package carefully, I think, you're not going to have any problems with your beer shelf life.
If
I
I
have
may,
a
real quick.
question. Let me ask this question and see if you have the
Okay.
answer to it.
Okay.
Ascorbic acid, is it doing an oxidative reaction to take the oxygen out? And if so, putting it in the mash, how much is going to make it through to a packaged product anyway? I don't know the
Well,
answer
yeah,
to that, Mike. I
it
thought you
does
might.
have oxygen scouring properties. I would say you're not going to get a whole lot if you run it through the mash tun. I actually have a homebrewing compatriot here in my club that he makes hazies, and then he'll add ascorbic acid to the keg that he racks it
Yeah.
into as
Heard
a almost instead of like a Camden tablet. So he's using it as a kind of an antioxidant that to try to help preserve that hop aroma in a hazy where it's so delicate. I mean, any packaged oxygen, you're gonna ruin that beer. So that's what he swears by, and I was thinking about it. He's been talking it up so much, I was thinking about trying it. So,
I mean, I could see that. I wouldn't do it during the mash, but I could see in packaging, and that's where I think commercial brewers have used it maybe in the past. It's just, the industry really went away from adding anything to beer, that wasn't, standard, Reinheitsgebot, materials. And so,
I just, sorry. Yeah, I just looked it up. The Oxblock stuff is sold as a Lodo style product. So it's more about getting your lighter beer, getting your no oxygen early on, and not necessarily, I mean, the Oxblock's not necessarily ascorbic acid, but Oxblock's is not about your packaged product so much as it is about getting the beer that you put into your packaged product. It looks like in 5 seconds on the web. I'm an expert now, But yeah. So if the ascorbic acid is doing the same thing again in the mash, not really going to make it through. But post, at Mike, I know some people that have done it as well. I have not had a beer that had it in there. I've certainly not A/B'd it since I hadn't had the B to see if it makes a difference.
But you've had the A.
Yes, the non-ascorbic acid NEPAs all the time. Yeah,
you've had the A. You haven't had the B. All right, just checking.
Patrick Donnelly asks, "Hello, Would you have an additional document on the water profiles for the recipes and brewing classic styles?
Huh? What?
Patrick
No,
Dunn.
we don't have a water thing for the recipes brewing classic styles. Um, if I ever get the second book done, the new one, I was trying to get Palmer to do it with me, and I told him he could do the water profiles for it. So we would add water profiles to the second brewing classic styles.
So it's not no, it's not yet.
Not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
not yet,
Yes.
Patrick. Not yet, my
Not yet.
son.
Patrick's been waiting 3 years for the answer. He's going to have to wait just a little bit longer.
Yes.
Not too bad.
I was going to say, if you've got an iPhone, you can download the John Palmer Water Adjustment app, and it has recommended water profiles for all of BJCP 2008, which was
2008.
when the book was written. So there you go.
That's perfect.
Bam.
2008. Oh, coming up with solutions.
Yeah, that's what I use anyways when I need a quick reference.
Perfect. All right. Dan Reinhold asks, pitched cold 44F into Dortmunder Wort from big starter of third generation WLP German lager yeast on Sunday, February 20th, 2011. Fermenting at 44F. I have temp control. My question is, cold maturation during fermentation or raise temp slowly to mature beer before lagering? Which method do you recommend? I can reread that. It's
Yes.
yeah, okay. So let me recap. So Dan's doing a on a cool side of a lager. He's fermenting at 44F and he's holding it, and he's curious if he should raise temperature towards the end of fermentation before he lagers. I don't see if there's an other during fermentation. Yeah, keep it cold and lager later, or warm it before lagering. The gist of it. And he's fermenting at 44F.
I think he's talking about, should I do a maturation rest or should I just finish the fermentation cold?
Right.
That's what I get.
What I like to do is I also like to start at 44F, but I let the temperature go up shortly after fermentation starts, and I hold it around 50F, and then as it gets into fermentation a little bit, then I slowly let the thing ramp up. About halfway through, as soon as I see any sign that the fermentation might be starting to slow or going to slow in the next day or so, I start adjusting the temperature up a degree or a couple of degrees Fahrenheit, 1°C per day. And if it starts slowing even more, I'll raise it, maybe 2°C, and let the fermentation rise in temperature until I get up to maybe 60 Fahrenheit or so. You can go as high as 65 Fahrenheit, and that ensures that you get full attenuation. It tends to encourage the yeast to keep active and clean up any fermentation byproducts. And then at the end, you're pretty much ready to go ahead and slowly cool it back down, and then pack it. And you slowly cool it back down to over a little warmer than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't want to go below 40, and then lager however long you want to lager. That's how I do it. It's kind of a modified Narcissus fermentation.
That's I don't pitch it that cold. I would say I pitch it right at, I'm usually more around 52 to 55. And then I always do it on my tilt, where I'm actually logging the fermentation rate and the progress. And once I get to I get to a certain fermentation rate, I start to raise the temperature slowly. I'm usually more in the range of 6 degrees Fahrenheit per day over the entire day. Like, I spread it out so it raises at one temp, and then 6 hours later, one more. Real nice, slow, gentle ascent.
So
yeah.
with that yeast specifically, I started at 48, do the same thing, do a ramp, follow it. So I think we all agree you definitely want to warm it as you're finishing it. Now, the one thing that I think might throw a monkey wrench in it, Jamil, I've not brewed a Dortmunder and I've had very few. I believe it's a larger lager, but not necessarily a multi-year lager. Is there a reason you wouldn't want it to finish drier, let it finish out like 830
No,
wants to do?
Dortmunder is just a minerally lager,
Yeah.
a high mineral water.
Okay.
There's no reason not to let it finish out dry.
Right. Good.
Good attenuation is important to all
Yeah.
lagers.
I would say I've heard from other professional brewers in the podcast format where they really stick to that traditional fermentation temperature process where they do not allow it to heat, and then they actually will chill it at the end. I would say that works. It's just going to take a lot more time. And so if you've got the time and you want to sit on the beer and be able to tell people I brewed this the same way it was brewed 600 years ago, you can say that. But for me, the science is pretty definitive that when you raise that temperature, it's not really, it's shortening the fermentation slightly, but it's also, it helps the kinetics of the reactions to reduce those off flavors to make sure that you get a high quality, fully finished beer with no off flavor diacetyl, or, I mean, unless it's supposed to be there, or acetaldehyde.
Good stuff. I hope Dan's lager came out well and he's still making lagers.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this is surprising for how far back it is, John. Sorry, it's to John Jamil. Eric Morse writes, "Hi, John and Jamil. I have developed a sensitivity to gluten, which, as you may know, is in barley as well as wheat, oats, and rye. So far, I am drinking and brewing less beer and trying alternative beverages like wine and cider. I know I could brew beer with sorghum or other grains that don't contain gluten, but before I try such drastic measures, I am wondering if there are any brewing techniques that would break down or reduce the amount of gluten in beer. Would a protein rest break down gluten? Can I filter out gluten? Is there anything I can do during fermentation to break down gluten? Do you know any brewers or breweries that are brewing great GF beer? I would appreciate any light you can shed on this issue. Thanks, from Eric, who is in Sandwich, New Hampshire, which I didn't know existed. Hope the sandwiches are good there. Can I make a request on this one? I mean, obviously, things have changed since 2011.
Yeah.
Can we try to focus not on all the advanced products we have now? I mean, first approach his question and then add on all the new things that have happened in the last 13 years.
The first thing is you can't filter it out. You can't protein rest it or anything like that. You would have to use gluten-free grains in order to do this. But the modern thing is Brewer's Clarex. I think the homebrew version is Clarity Firm that White Labs puts out. It's an enzyme, and it was designed to make beer clearer. But what it does is denatures that gluten, and for if you're ultra sensitive to gluten, then it may not work for you. But most people find that it reduces the gluten down to a point where it does not cause you any issues. And so you can get that from a homebrew shop and use that. Sorry, it took 13 years to get back to you on this one, but that's available now. I will also say in the new book, The Modern Homebrewer, it's we cover brewing gluten-free beers, and that's in there as well. So.
Yeah, I think it is worth noting he was only a year or so ahead of his time asking that question, because it wasn't far after that I think these gluten-reducing compounds came to the market, which Merlinus Monroe in the chat asks, doesn't Clarity Firm still leave a lot of the gluten? And I think the answer to that is the protein sensitivity is nearly reduced to immeasurable levels.
It gets down to undetectable levels.
Yeah. So the the actual FDA guidelines for gluten free has to be less than 20 parts per million gluten.
Well,
clarity.
in certain countries, they're 20 parts per million. In the U.S., if you brew a beer and you use one of these enzymes, it can only be labeled as gluten reduced.
That's what I was going to get to. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So with that, and then the ability to get it that low, you're technically, and like it's all jurisdictional, but they can't technically call it gluten free. My big thing that I have, when I took brewery science at UC Davis, Charlie Bamforth went on this big. One of his lectures in the class, he's talking about bright beer versus hazy beer, partially hazy beer, and he made the assertion that, and this depends on your gluten. I mean, if you're a full-on celiac, I would not trust this, but if you have a sensitivity, maybe think about this, because I actually have a friend of mine who's a celiac, and I told him this, and he felt like it helped. But bright beer, by definition, has much less protein content than a hazy beer or an opaque beer or a cloudy beer. So, Professor Bamforth was like, if you can brew a perfectly bright, clear, brilliantly clear beer, that's going to have without any other enzymatic additions or using sorghums and stuff like that, you can actually minimize the gluten content. It's not going to knock it down to where Brewer's Clerics can, but it will be less than if, like, say, a hazy. And I even feel like on days I drink a couple hazies, I feel a little bloated and like the gluten got to me. So I feel it a little bit, but I would say that's also something to consider. And I heard it from the professor emeritus at UC Davis, and he's a special advisor to Sierra Nevada. So he's not just pulling it out of his butt, I wouldn't think so.
I would like to understand just how good, like, what's the ppm level at which you can't see protein? I bet it's a little over 20.
Yeah, I would think it's, like I said, I think if you're really allergic and you have like a serious reaction to anything gluten, you shouldn't be drinking beer made with barley or wheat.
Well, if something like Budweiser is a problem for you, then there's no homebrew you're going to brew.
No.
Using barley that is going to be okay for you, because they're using rice in there as well, and you're not going to get a beer more brilliantly clear than that. So if that's a problem for you, then this is not a solution for you. I would turn to the Brewer's Clerics is really the best way to go about it, I think. There's a number of breweries who are using that, or at least in the U.S. and I believe around the world, that are making some gluten reduced beers that all the people I tested it with, they said, yeah, it's great. And actually, I did a test with somebody with their permission. They mentioned that they couldn't drink beer anymore, but they loved beer. And so we added the Brewer's Clerics to a keg and with the beer and let it sit for a couple of days. And then they drank that and they said they didn't have any trouble at all. So
awesome.
You can do it that way too.
Yeah.
My thought was, you might be able to just add it to a pint glass, pour a beer in there, and it may be okay.
Yeah. I can actually speak to this because I've brewed with it a couple times, and mostly for clarity concerns, but also to see how it affects people who have gluten sensitivities. And I can speak to, I think it works really well. I mean, I've had several friends who are celiac or gluten intolerant or sensitive, and they remarked that they felt so much better after that versus if they, because some people just suck it up and they're like, I know I'm going to hate tomorrow or hate in an hour or two, but I love beer. So I'm going to, and like, I was like, well, try this. It's got this special stuff in it to reduce the gluten. So yeah, it works.
Have either of you brewed with the Clerics or the Clarity Firm?
Yeah, that was my story. I've used it in 2 different beers.
It was your beers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually, I think I sent you the one. It was the no, that was a Kolsch. No. Sorry. It was a Kolsch, and then I did cold IPA that I was trying to get it to clear up real brilliant.
Yeah,
But
you
both
did
of
not
them
send me
had
your
this.
cold IPA.
No, I mixed it up with that pre-pro pills that I sent you.
Yeah.
It's a different one.
Yeah. All right. We have one short one in the chat from Merlinus Monroe. Merlinus, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name, and my apology will be in the form of I'll keep saying it the wrong way, I guess. I hope it's Merlinus Monroe, though. Merlinus has an odd and mildly unrelated question. All Bocks are lagers, aren't they? He gives us the, this is why we answer this question. You folks are all experts, so I believe what you say. Damn straight.
Well, that can be very dangerous, Merlinus. Yes, all Bocks are lagers. There's a variety of Bocks from, standard Bock beer, Doppelbock beer, Maibock.
Weizenbock.
Well, no, Weizenbock is not a lager.
It's an ale.
What's an ale?
So Aventin has advertised their
Yes.
their Doppelbock is an ale, and it's a Weizen Doppel.
I always considered Bock meant stronger, like it was a stronger beer.
Yeah. So not all Bocks are lagers. Why am I saying that?
It's the Ram.
Yes. Well, in my heart, I'm not. I love the lager Bock beers. Those are I went and did Stark Beer Fest.
Yeah.
Man, that was spectacular. And if I ever finish that article for Brew Your Own, you'll see it in Brew Your Own.
Let me know. I have to buy that issue.
Yeah.
Hey, but you are a fan of Aventinus, I think, correct?
Yeah, not so much anymore. But I always used to enjoy it. I would put it in the little red wagon when I was taking the kids around for Halloween, and share with the other adults that I met across the way. Have a little ice chest with some Weizenbock in there.
Yeah, not to insult your kids, but that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
That was a long, long time ago.
It's like reverse trick or treating, and then it's also like adult reverse trick or treating.
There you go. All right. On that note, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on two gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at BlickmanEngineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew strong.
All right, we're back. You're doing questions that you've sent in from your emails to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. We're doing questions that you ask live in the chat, like Patrick just asked. No, he didn't ask.
No, he's
commenting.
Yeah, it's a fact. Icebox will mess you up.
Yes, Icebox can. There you go. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
All right. What do we got next?
We have a long one from Olivier, and I think, in all fairness, he's asked 3 questions, so we can approach any one if we wish, and put the other 2 off for, I don't know, another 13 years. How it works out. I'm instead of reading through all of it, I'm going to see if we can read through the first one alone. See how that we digest that. So if I should read all 3. So anyway, hello, Jamil and John. Great shows. Thank you so much. Last week I have brewed an amber ale, partial match, 7.5 pound grist, 2 pounds DME. Predicted OG 1056 for 5 gallons, 3 gallons boil. Question 1. After transferring 3 gallons to fermenter, I take gravity to see how much water to add after pitching 1 liter healthy starter. So he's taking the gravity after pitching his starter. I am right on the money, and the calculator tells me to add 2 gallons for a 5-gallon batch at 1056. After adding water to make up 5 gallons, I take gravity, and I'm still very high. I ended up with 5.5 gallons at 1062. Wanted to keep headroom. What went wrong? I made careful measurement, temperature corrected, waited at the end session for homebrew. He's concerned maybe he was too sober.
Well, that's always a problem.
Mhm.
I would imagine that his actual measurement of his volume before adding the water was slightly off, and that's where
His gravity measurement, because he added volume and he went up in gravity.
Oh, it went up in gravity after adding?
He went from
No,
1056 to 1062 by just adding water and yeast. His starter, unless his starter hadn't fermented out, but that would be a very strong starter.
No. Then his gravity measurement's wrong. I thought he was at 1062, and then I don't know.
The
Was
way
trying
I
to
read
water
it,
it down.
he was saying he was right on the money with all of his measurements, and then he added the 2 gallons and took a gravity, and it was way too high.
So he thought he'd end up at 1056, but he ended up at 1062. So he didn't go up in gravity. He just ended up with more gravity than expected.
He says, I take gravity. I'm still very high. Ended with 1062 at 5.5.
So I think either the second measurement after adding the water wasn't mixed in well enough. Maybe the water just, and he got a bad sample that way, or his initial measurement of volume was incorrect, and he had more volume than he thought. So instead of having 3 gallons, maybe he had 3.3 or 3.5 gallons in there, and then when he added the 2 gallons of water or whatever it was, or maybe he had, whatever the amount was, he was slightly off. And so he ended up, Patrick throws in temperature. Perhaps when he was taking his initial gravity reading, temperature was high, and so his gravity reading was low. The word is warmer, you get a lower gravity reading. So he didn't adjust for temperature, possibly. And then when he added the water, it cooled down, and then so he got a higher reading that way. So that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
He doesn't mention chilling it. So yes, it could have been rather warm. It could have been several points off.
Well, I was operating under the assumption that all that was temperature corrected. My big concern is I was curious what his brewing efficiency calcs were. Like what percentage of brewing efficiency did he assume to get to 1056? Maybe his mash, like he used these grains that had really high fermentability, or his extract efficiency was way higher than he thought it was going to be. And so if he was assuming a super low extract efficiency, then that would happen too. You'll overshoot pretty far. I mean, I've done it plenty of times.
Oh,
when you end up with like a 7% hef.
I was assuming that he had taken a gravity measurement before adding the water.
He states that he does, yeah. Before water, but after the yeast pitch, which I'll try to ignore that. Which don't do that, folks. Don't add the yeast until after everything's settled out.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I gotta say it's a inaccurate volume is most likely, or as Patrick's mentioning, maybe is inaccurate reading because of temperature. That's a possibility if he didn't correct for temperature, especially if he's using something like a refractometer. Yeah, that's always questionable.
All right.
Yeah,
measurement error.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Or extract efficiency.
Well, what would extract efficiency have anything to do with it?
So let's say
we're talking about the measurements, not
extract efficiency could be why it was higher than he measured. So, I mean,
I
that might
just
be the
don't-
reason why it was higher, but he still had a measurement issue
Right.
here somewhere. It could be both easily.
Right. He could have had an extract deficiency problem, but he measured it before adding the water and then added the water and it was higher than he thought it should be.
I guess I read it differently.
Calculator issue. We don't know what calculator you use.
I'm just saying, I feel like the question leaves a little bit to wonder what he says.
What the hell's
I
going
am
on?
right on the money, and the calculators tell me to add 2 gallons for 5 gallons at 1056. That makes me think
to get
if he
to
adds 2 gallons, he
1056.
gets to 1056, and then he gets. I add the water to
Ends
make it
up-
5 gallons. I take gravity, and I'm still very high.
at
Mhm.
So as he
1062.
would,
Yeah, he added 2.5 instead of 2.
then he
Whatever that
added
initial
another
reading
half,
is.
and he was at
Yeah,
1062.
Right.
That
right.
makes me think
So I'm
that
saying his initial high gravity volume was higher than he thought. He thought he had 3 gallons, but he really had, 3.5 or 4 gallons.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
Now,
Because if he had 3 gallons, right, and then he added 2, how did he end up with 5.5 gallons?
well, he goes on to say he added an extra half gallon for
Oh,
headspace,
okay.
something like
Okay.
that.
There you
He's
go.
Yeah,
like, I added the water to make 5. I took a gravity. I'm way too high. I added another half, and now I'm at 1062. And he feels like he can't add any more water. He's like, what went wrong?
Right.
And so
Right.
I was thinking he just
Well, sure.
His calculator-
I mean, high extract efficiency, but if he measured it, he would have.
He would have seen it. And the calculation would have said he was going to be high.
Right. He would have.
Mhm.
It would have told him to add 3 gallons, and he'd be like, "Well, this ain't gonna fit." Well, there you
Okay.
go. All right.
there you go.
The second part of the question. or
Question
second
2.
Question? Yes.
Even with an extra half gallon, the color of the beer is much lighter, which that's a weird even.
Uh-huh.
Because especially with the extra half gallon, the color, I should have read the whole thing. I apologize. Even with the extra half gallon, the color of the beer is much lighter, 10 SRM, than a predicted color of 14.8. Now, he is approximating both the 10 and the 14.8.
Well, if you're adding an extra half gallon, that would make it lighter.
Yeah. I don't know if it'd make it that much different, but we don't
10%.
know. Yeah, the extract that he got,
10% lighter if you're
True.
5 gallons, 5.5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mike does math for a living, don't you?
Yeah.
I act like I do spreadsheets. Anyway, he did add a good amount of salts, gypsum, salt, baking soda. He uses San Francisco tap water. He is not worried about the color, but was wondering about the amount of salts made the beer clearer. We can go no on that one, right? The salts did not affect the color.
I
of
have
his
not
work.
heard that. No. Unless Jamil's got some secret to tell us.
Well, when you use this salt,
Yeah, it's like, He
Yeah,
actually
I gotta think, in this, it's his second measurement must have been way off.
well, he's not measuring here. He's looking at it, and
Right. I'm just saying in the first part of the question,
oh,
the second
more than-
measurement of the first part. This is
Yeah.
why I tell people to limit your questions to just one, but that's all right.
this is why I was wondering.
I think I think this that if it's coming out lighter, and it just sounds like after he added the water and all this, I think he made a measurement error then. Maybe
I
he
agree.
started drinking by that point.
Yeah.
And
Well,
now
I think he started
it's
drinking
looking,
after the brew day before the question.
it's looking quite a bit lighter in color. And I think maybe he's just had a brain fart when he was taking his gravity reading, and it's really not that high. Maybe it's 1052 and he read it as 1062 or something like that. 1042, God knows. All right.
All right. Question 3.
Yes.
Pitched with 1 liter WLP 013 London Ale using Cervomyces sterplate equals healthy yeast. This yeast should give me an attenuation of about 70%, but after 3 days, I already got an attenuation close to 85%. Went from 1062 to 1009 in 3 days. Mash temp was 152F. Temperature remained from 65 to 68 fermentation. Again, what went wrong? The beer is much stronger than what I wanted now. Contamination? I go back to measurement. 1062 was never correct.
I agree.
Yeah.
He didn't get 85% attenuation with blended ale with no simple sugars in that mash.
Yeah,
wouldn't
I think you're
I
right.
could be wrong.
If
I
he's
agree.
operating like his OG is too high, like
Mhm.
or at least there's error and it's showing
Mhm.
high, it's going to show that it's way higher alcohol. So yeah, I think we've kind of surmised.
The butler in the library with the candlestick.
Yes. I think we have deduced, my dear colleagues, that
Yes.
the issue was a false second reading after dilution.
Yeah.
The word gravity was not 1062. It was much lower.
Yes.
And you are guilty of murdering that beer. So there
I
you
sentence you to
go. Rebrew.
drink it.
Yes. Well, the giveaway here is the beer is much stronger than I wanted now. You know he's lying at that point. Who's ever said that? He set us up.
Oh man, I'm gonna get drunk faster.
Right. Rightio.
So, Olivier, if you're listening in, send us some tasting notes on this beer. Let us know how it came out.
Yeah. No, and all kidding aside, good questions. We appreciate the challenge of trying to deduce what went wrong with the beer without tasting it, but that's all right.
Absolutely.
We appreciate your sending in your questions. And as a reminder to everybody else, you can, even if you can't listen live, where you can ask in the chat, like Patrick and Merlinus and others have done tonight. You can send your questions in to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. Just tappity on the email. Try and limit it to one question if you can. If you can't, that's all right. You can pretend like it's one really long question, and we'll be happy to answer it for you. We'll get to them pretty quick. We've changed our method of operating. We're getting to them pretty quick. Let's see. Let's take one more break, and then we'll be back with your questions right after this.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're doing live Q&A. If you're listening live, you can see us on Facebook. You can listen live. You can ask questions, all that stuff. You can see Mike and his finger guns. It's great. There you are. Yes.
All right.
But you have to watch.
The joy of the Brewing Network.
We do have one question in the chat. Brad writes in, Mike is the man? No. Mike is the man. Mike is the man. Never mind. Sorry.
Mike is the man. Yes.
Yes. He's the
Yay.
man. Yes.
Thanks, man. You're the man.
All right. John Larkin writes. John Larkin, who I think must do some coding for a living outside of his homebrew. Dear Jamil and John, praise equals lavish and gratuitous. Thank you for what you guys do. End praise. Exclamation equals lengthy and boring. I want to get a better feel for my ingredients. End explanation. Question, vague and misspelled. I'll forgive him for that. I want to make 5 or 10 different single hop beers to get a better taste for the hops I routinely use, as well as some of the varietals I haven't tried or haven't tried in a while. Since there are a lot of varietals and I'm probably not going to do less than 4-gallon batch, I'd like something with a malt profile that will keep me interested for the 2 or 3 weeks it takes to get through the beer. Can you recommend a grain bill for an extra pale ale, hoppy but not quite an IPA, that would showcase the hops? 100% Maris Otter is probably too one note for me. End question. Thanks, guys.
Well, Travis, this seems like it's right up your alley. You do a lot of those smash beers and things like that, where you're testing out different hops.
I do, and I would invite John over to try some to see if they are too one note, because I do Golden Promise across the board smashes all the time, and I really enjoy them. I don't get bored, but I am focused on the hops. It's the Golden Promise isn't jumping out at me, but I mean, I did pills, Rars pills, Rars Standard Pale, etc. Even Rars Pale Ale. I've done 6 or 8 different base malts, and I settled on that Golden Promise I get as a really good showcase for the hops. So when he asks about adding a malt in there, I mean, I guess you could throw something out easy enough, but how much makes it interesting before clashes? And one of you guys want to take a shot at that? And which would you put in there?
Well, one of the problems with, adding more malts and more malt flavors in there is that the maltier the beer becomes, the less the hops come out, right? So, especially anything that results in sweetness, crystal malts, things like that can really mask hop character. Uh, I would suggest, you might try throwing in a little bit of, biscuit or aromatic or something like that, something that has, malt character to it, but yeah, in small amounts, Mike's saying. I can read his mind. It's small amounts. But something that does not produce a lot of residual sweetness or heavy character, and something like that can add a note to it, maybe.
So when you say small amount, Jamil, you want to throw out like a couple percent, 2 to 5%? Is 5 too much already?
Well, the problem with percentages is it ignores the size of the beer, the gravity of the beer.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing, we all use percentages because it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter, you can scale it because it's just a percentage. But if you're doing a really big beer and you add 5%, crystal malt, it's going to be a crystal bomb. Yet you can make a British, bitter and add, 10% crystal, and it's fine. So it just, some of these things don't really work. But in most, if you're doing a 5-gallon average gravity beer, maybe 2 ounces, a couple ounces, something like that. Is that small enough for you, Mike?
Yeah. I was gonna say I usually base these kind of things on the color if I have nothing else to go on, and usually with pale ales, I would like to see them in the 4 to 6, no more than 7, because then I feel like you're just gonna have way too much malt character, and that's just a real general kind of thought process. I was gonna say, if you want something a little different, maybe if a single malt is too one note, as you say, maybe try adding some oats or some wheat or maybe even some rye if you're feeling frisky. Something
some pale rye
that will throw some more flavor for you, but not be sweet and kind of caramelly or even add more dark kind of malt character. That was where I was at, but like Travis was saying, a smash with Golden Promise, I mean, that's going to be plenty of malt character. I mean, maybe if you're really feeling crazy, you could do something like a Environment Barca. Those have so much flavor for what it is, and it's a Pilsner malt, but it doesn't taste like it. So if you wanted to try something like that, I would even say if you're doing smashes and you really want to get an idea of what this hop contributes to a beer, you might even think of like throw some corn and get a lighter flavor, a little lighten it up and make it a little less and more like a cream ale, but then with your hops. So all over the place, man. I would just say whatever you like, but I would shy away from adding crystal malts, darker malts to try to add some more flavor because you're just going to hide flavor, the hop character.
Patrick was suggesting in the chat that you could try out your local maltsters in your area. Fun to use their base malts for a smash.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jamil, you did say aromatic, and you said
Biscuit.
biscuit. Yeah, sorry. A lot of people, and I'm not the biggest fan of it, a lot of people like to put Munich in their IPAs and stuff. Touch of Munich, maybe. I mean,
Touch of Munich. Yeah.
if you've got to do it, I mean, I feel like all this discussion is if you have to do it, because I could just be base malt personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, Munich
I do too. I like Mike's idea of rye, you know. But yeah, I think, you know, especially if you're trying to showcase what a hop does, I like that, you know, just one single malt, you know, Golden Promise. I love Golden Promise and hops and just those two. And it also lets you, you know, explore, you know, things with your yeast as well and fermentation. All right.
Nice
How are we
question.
doing on questions?
That is what I had queued up. We have some water ones we could hit. That might be long if you'd like, Jamil.
No, I think we're good. I think we're good.
All right.
All right. As always, thank you for listening, and we appreciate your support. We appreciate even more if you can support our fine sponsor, Blickman Engineering. Check them out. Drew is supporting us and making sure that you get this show for free, which is awfully nice considering what the show consists of. I really, you know, I'm all right, but these two guys, you know. But if you have questions for the show, please send them in. Brewstrong at thebrewingnetwork.com. If you have show ideas, you can send those into the same email address. We appreciate all your participation and your listening, and we hope to see you at some beer event soon in the future. Who knows? I'm sure any or all of us will be around.
I'll be at NCHF, Northern California Homebrew Festival.
There you
and
go.
I'm likely to go to GABF. So hit me
There
up.
you go. All right. Well, do you have anything coming up, Travis? You going anywhere?
No, I have a 4-year-old.
You're living with kids. Yeah, there you go. All right. Until then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong.
Brew strong, everybody.